This is your World War III update. I want you guys to imagine for a second that you are the rapacious oligarchs who are at the helm of this sinking Pax American ship. This empire that is treading on the coattails of past successes when it used to be the envy of the world. In its pinnacle in the 1980s, America was the bastion of freedom, liberty, and democracy. And today, we find ourselves in the twilight. We find rising superpowers vying for dominion of this planet. Nonetheless, we still find ourselves in an ideal set of circumstances to fight and to undermine these rising superpowers. As such is the paradox of Thucydides Trap, in that the rising empires pose a threat to the existing empire, so the existing empire, in an attempt to thwart their rise, will do something to undermine that rise. Now imagine for a second you find yourself in a situation where the following is true. Oil is relatively low. All things considered, gas prices are down. People are relatively happy. Grocery prices aren't down, but hey, it's cheap to fill up at the pump. Markets are still seemingly at all-time highs, not factoring inflation, of course. Nonetheless, people look at their 401ks and they're happy for the time being. Everyone, of course, except Warren Buffett, who sees the Warren Buffett indicator as the highest ever in recorded history. The Gestapo is being brought in under the Trojan horse of ICE. These will be the future brown shirts that are used to round up people, not just illegal immigrants, but people who might pose any sort of threat to the established order. And in addition to that, they will rightfully serve the duty of trying to thwart asymmetrical style attacks, because we don't want to be a victim of the machinations that we've perpetrated on other countries, like Operation Spiderweb, or the decapitation strike attempt that was initiated by the Mossad and the CIA in Iran. Okay, so we need an army, a literal army, to try to harden our critical infrastructure against these attacks on our soft targets. That's what ICE is for, okay? And that's why they now have a blank check for funding for the foreseeable future. You have space-based warfare in the form and under the guise of the Golden Dome, the nuclearization of space. You got a green light, you got a budget for it, okay? And that budget is only going to get bigger, mark my words. You have Europe armed to the teats for World War III, committing 5% of their GDP spend. You have Germany, unironically talking about how they want to be one of the biggest military powers in Europe once again, and they want to acquire more nuclear weapons in addition to the ones that the Americans have parked there right now. You have bicameral support. You have all three branches of government. You just passed one of the biggest bills in history that gives you a blank check to do whatever the fuck you want, okay? And all the while, you have this moat with this new artificial intelligence stuff, okay? You have an advantage over the competition, but it's shrinking by the day. And your TSMC fabs that you have, the places where they manufacture the most advanced chips on the planet, in Taiwan, that's now in the crosshairs of the Chinese, who are becoming more and more emboldened and encroaching deeper and deeper on Taiwanese airspace every single day. And you're arming the Taiwanese with not only weapons, but troops in order to train them that are just outside China's borders. You have a mentally neutered population that will likely accept any bullshit you say out of fear that the other side could get in power and do worse. Okay, so it's not even so much that people are mentally incapable of understanding what's going on, although I'd say most of the subvocal or lack of subvocal NPCs out there probably don't understand what's truly going on, but most people, out of fear of the Democrats, will just go along with whatever you do at this point in time. And you have a little bit of momentum now, or at least for those uncritical people anyways, it appears as though you have a little bit of momentum with respect to the very small Pyrrhic victories that you've been able to achieve throughout the Middle East. Now you tell me if that is not the most ideal environment to pull the trigger and just go all in on World War fucking III. Okay? You're never going to have an opportunity like this. You're never going to have a guy like Trump in office again that is going to be able to galvanize the population, that is going to be able to contradict himself at every single opportunity, make promises and break those promises, and people will still follow him into oblivion. You're never going to have this opportunity again. And your adversaries are only getting more powerful by the day. Of course, they're going to go all in right now. This is your last chance. This really is Thucydides' last chance. Thucydides' Trap is when you have a rising superpower who is emerging and imposing a threat on the established superpower. And in order to sustain their dominion, they have to undermine and thwart the rise of this rising superpower. And that is what we have right now. We have the United States employing its 1980s stealth bomber technology, flexing it, okay? We're stuck in the 80s. Most people don't realize that. When Hulk Hogan peeled off his shirt at that RNC conference, I knew it right there, and I commented on it in one of my videos, that we're has-beens. Okay, now, fortunately, despite the fact that we're has-beens, we're still ahead of the competition. But right now, I think they're going to embark on a gambit. And this is why Donald Trump spilled the beans today when he said, oh yeah, we're going to continue to arm Ukraine. I warned you guys since day one that as soon as Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin and this phony bromance dissipates into the ether, that is when things are going to get scary, and we are now at that point. I have some direct quotes from Donald Trump today, which you can never really take to the bank, because of course, Donald Trump is the king of strategic ambiguity, and make no mistake about it, I make no political prescriptions on this channel. I don't care who's in power, okay? Because I know they're all on the same team. That's what some of you guys don't understand. Oh, he must be some sort of crypto liberal or something. He must want the other side to get in there. He must be a secret AOC fetishizer or something to that effect. Listen, I don't care who wins, with the exception of I wanted the Conservatives to win here in Canada because I thought it would postpone the gun grab for a few more years. But, with respect to American politics, it's a uniparty. Doesn't matter who gets in. Doesn't matter if Trump is the guy who gets in for the next 10 years. If he somehow finds a way to stay in office, or it's J.D. Vance, it's not going to matter. I will criticize whoever the president is all the same. But some of you guys don't get that. Now, I know since I've started this new channel, I've been able to curate my audience to a much more intellectual audience of critical thinkers who understand where I'm coming from. And this is why we're preppers, because we know this is inevitable. Okay, now let's just go into the news. Sorry for that long-winded rant. I did not expect to spend 8 minutes and 26 seconds. Okay, but now that the stage is set, let's talk about the news. The U.S. is revoking the terrorist designation for the ISIS-run al-Nusra Front. You can't make this shit up. Here we are accusing the Iranians of committing terrorist acts throughout the United States. The Iranians, to the best of my knowledge, have never in history committed a terrorist attack on American mainland soil. Can you believe that? And here we are now revoking the terrorist designation for ISIS leaders in Syria. And the reason why they're doing that is because they need them to be a proxy to deal with Hezbollah and Lebanon. At least that's what the Middle Eastern experts are saying, and I'm inclined to believe them. Netanyahu, get a load of this, has nominated Donald Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize. Yes. Of all of the witty things that you could say in this situation to characterize the level of delusion and hubris that has to be present in order for them to try to make such a statement, we're talking about a guy who is a war criminal as designated by the International Criminal Court. Of course, the United States is not signatory to that, neither is the Russians. Nonetheless, nobody is a war criminal like Netanyahu is, okay? And For people to just look past this, it's insane to me how Pollyannish people have to be in order to not truly see what's going on here. Do you really think it's a surprise? And here we are flying close to the sun right now. I'm Icarus right now, baby. Okay? I'm going to fly real close to the sun. Isn't it a surprise that Israel got everything it wanted, hook, line, and sinker from Trump, and all of a sudden, we're just going to tear up those Epstein documents the same day that the boss comes to town, that Netanyahu comes to Washington, right? And hosts a supper and invites Trump. We learned that, there ain't no list and Epstein, didn't kill himself. Okay, sure. And all those same people who I warned you about this. I said, they're going to give you nothing. They're going to, string you along with all of these Ruse, like the gold thing and the drone thing and what's going to be next? They're running out of ammunition. So they're going to find something else. It's going to be UFOs, or they're going to find some other, esoteric conspiracy that they're going to, promise that they're going to declassify, but they never will. Or they never will in a way that's going to be consequential or a threat to the established order of things. Never going to happen. That's what's going on. The ICE riots are coming, baby. ICE is, make no mistake about it, this is a Trojan horse for not only the likely crackdown of any kind of meaningful dissent against the upcoming foreign policy, but also a way to do a dragnet sweep of potential would-be likely sleeper cells. Because all the propaganda aside, America would be incredibly easy to infiltrate at this point. So I think they realized, oh shit, we're doing all this diabolical stuff over there. Eventually, the Chinese or the Russians are going to get the crazy idea that, oh my God, these guys live in a glass house. We could literally go over there. We could turn the place upside down overnight. All we got to do is take out a handful of these major transformers, and we could bring down the entire power grid. Handful of guys could do it, literally, right? With a few, household-made explosives. And they could do it. And so this is the scary situation that I actually am concerned about. And it's, the Chinese are masters at just following the art of war and just remaining incredibly silent, letting their plans be stealthy as night and strike down like a thunderbolt. And what they could do, theoretically, is they could just, in one fell swoop, unleash every single fucking 0 day at the exact same time, not only in terms of cyber, but awaken all of the sleeper cells at the exact same time. So there is a legitimate threat here, but you understand that that legitimate threat is going to be used to bring in a dystopian, authoritarian nightmare. Don't worry, they'll give you your guns. They'll make sure you have your guns. But, when 50 guys with guns come knocking on your neighbor's house and you do nothing, well, guess whose house they're going to come to next? Everything that we're seeing right now in Ukraine with the forced conscription, with the dehumanization of people, like we see with these Palestinians who are clamoring for food, okay? And these, just these unthinkable scenes of people, burning in hospitals and all of these things. They're getting you used to that because eventually that's going to happen here. Okay? Lindsey Graham is proposing massive bipartisan Russian sanctions, and now that Trump's tone has changed on Russia overtly, I suspect that that's coming. They're talking about 500% tariffs on anybody who buys Russian oil. And guess who one of the main purchasers of Russian oil is? You guessed it, China. Still don't have that China deal, do we? No, we don't. Because I suspect, like I've stated before, that there never has been a better opportunity for them to dust off that plan for a decapitation strike against the Russians. They have a plan. They're currently encircling Russia. Iran, I think, was supposed to be perhaps one of the final pieces of that plan next to China. But make no mistake, there are research papers from think tanks and various institutes that outline plans for how they could do a decapitation strike in a very similar way that they have done Operation Spiderweb, where they took out some nuclear bombers and nearly took out the entire Iranian leadership. Okay, that's what they're planning. The Epstein ruse has clearly reached its expiry date. Grifters are making more excuses. In 2021, J.D. Vance said the following: "Remember when we learned that our wealthiest and most powerful people were connected to a guy who ran a literal child X trafficking ring?" Got to be careful because of the algorithm. "And then that guy died mysteriously in jail, and now we just don't talk about it." That was J.D. Vance in 2021. I wonder what he's saying today. Probably something else, because most people have an incredibly short-term memory. There's just so much information nowadays that it's impossible. Even if, they were to come out and just tell the most egregious of lies, they realize that it would be overshadowed by some major black swan event within 24 hours at this point in time. So we're truly living in the Popomo AI age. Kash Patel says that we need America to wake up and prioritize Israel. Oh, why do I bother doing this shit anymore? I should really just be spending every single waking hour preparing for the end of the world at this point in time. The Tucker Iran interview. Let's talk about that a little bit. So Iran is claiming that there was an assassination attempt, but that they held back. Okay, let me get this straight. They tried to wipe out your entire leadership. This Iranian Pezeshkian guy, the president, he claimed, and this guy has to be either, really good at keeping your enemies close and your friends close and your enemies closer, that whole strategy, or he's just a complete and utter moron. He's trying to say that they tried to take him out. They tried to end his life so that they could do total regime change on their country, and they would have lost, just like that. In addition to the Ayatollah, I presume, and the entire military leadership, who apparently was off duty at night, they're still trying to say that they held back in their response. Now, I don't understand it. They just don't understand the difference between predator and prey. The gazelle cannot communicate with a lion, okay? So it's like you had an opportunity to establish deterrence and you lost it. So either two things can be true. Either they were genuinely holding back because they're worried about nuclear Armageddon unfolding and they don't have nukes yet, or it's that they couldn't and they had to refrain. They had to be very measured in terms of the damage that they exacted on the Israelis in order to not beget the Samson response. Because based on what they're saying, well, we only used a small percentage of our arsenal, we used all our old stock, we could have launched hundreds, if not thousands of missiles. Okay, they tried to kill you. So it's like, what is there's no bigger red line than that. That is the ultimate of red lines. Okay, that's almost a bigger red line than using a nuclear weapon on you. Okay, because you probably, the leadership anyways, could survive a nuclear attack. So, these guys, they're going to continue to delude themselves that the Saudis, who, have the most advanced, very rare, and in very short supply, THAAD missile defense system from the United States, that they're their friends and that they're a part of BRICS now. And they're not just a fox in the henhouse. You know how they write these inconsequential letters of condemnation against Israel every month, but do nothing to try to stop the situation as it's unfolding in the Gaza Strip? Yeah, those guys. Oh yeah, they're our acquaintances. They're, they view us as equals, and we're at peace with them. It's like the Gulf states and Azerbaijan, where I remind people, that is where the president of Iran's helicopter got shot down. Remember when the president died last year? And all of these religious edicts and red tape, it's like, these guys are beholden to that, and this is why they're going to lose. I've always said, Islam will never be defeated because they don't want to win and they don't fear death. Like they don't understand the mentality, I think, of colonialism and imperialism that the West does. They're not operating on that function. And thus they're not afraid of death per se, which is a bad thing because you have to be afraid of death. You know, people who fear death will do anything to stay in power and stay alive. And if you don't fear death, then that's basically dooming yourself to being maybe not conquered, because you'll never be conquered. You'll just be balkanized and whipped into a frenzy, like most places in the Middle East that the West passes through. You're never going to be conquered, but you're never going to win, right? Because they just don't understand that mentality. The gazelle has no interest in eating the deer. What is that saying about an army of sheep led by a lion versus an army of lions led by a sheep, or something to that effect? You guys know what I'm saying, right? So anyways, there was a lot of criticism of Pezeshkian's response. So there are hardliners in Iran who take issue with this. And here's what they're saying. Iranian MP, a name I can't pronounce, but I can pronounce the last name. I'm going to give it a shot. Amir Hossein Sabiti slammed President Pezeshkian's interview with Tucker Carlson as weak and humiliating. I have to concur, even though I'm technically on this side of the fence. He condemned Pezeshkian's call for renewed U.S. negotiations, calling it naive and dangerous after past U.S. deceptions. There's a caveat to this that I'll say in a moment. He warned that such diplomacy undermines national unity and could invite more U.S. attacks. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Threatened that Parliament may take action in the form of impeachment, which is, big nothing burger, because we are told that it was the Ayatollah who is in control of everything. Anyways, Iran is, however, on a heightened state of alert. Their airspace, the part that matters, is still closed. Okay, they've been shutting down their internet. They've been incredibly vigilant because they understand what's going on. And today, of course, you have Trump and Witkoff promising, oh yeah, we're going to have those talks next week because those nuclear facilities have been completely obliterated. According to an Iranian intelligence official, Israel is planning to resume the war against us with Trump's support. What a surprise. We are monitoring the movements of American and Israeli forces in the region and warn them against any mistake, as our response will be devastating. Really? Will it though? Do you really think these guys believe your response is going to be devastating when they just tried to murder your entire family and you basically didn't do much at all? I know there's a lot of people who are embellishing the attacks that Iran exacted against Israel, but at the end of the day, they paled in comparison to the damage that was incurred by Iran. And any honest analyst would come to that conclusion. Iran got its ass kicked. Okay? So these kind of threats are hollow at this point. In fact, when you make those threats, you probably just make it more enticing, right? Because they just realize, oh, here it is, and because you didn't do anything different, right? You have to do something different. You got to act crazy. Remember that episode of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when Will Smith was telling his cousin, if you're going to get in a fight with somebody, you got to act really crazy, right? That's the best thing you can do. You got to act unpredictable. You got to do crazy shit that, they're not going to be able to factor into their calculus of how this is going to play out, because these guys do care about the markets. They do care to a certain degree about public sentiment about these issues. Israel is preparing for Iran. They're preparing for the possibility of further military action if Iran tries to revive its nuclear program. And Israeli officials think President Trump could greenlight renewed attacks. Well, of course, or else we're going to start hearing about Epstein again, right? Two sources with knowledge tell Axios. Axios. I wonder what is the root word of Axios? I'd really be interested in, because that's always the official source of the White House, eh? That and Politico. Those are the ones everybody listens to. I wonder if there's some etymology to that word, which is more esoteric. Who knows? Mossad sets up fake assassination website. Okay, this one is just silly that people will actually believe this. Okay, so the people who are talking about this are reputable accounts. And they're saying that Iran has launched a website to crowdfund a bounty on Trump's head after fatwas call for his assassination. Now, number one, there are many ayatollahs throughout Iran. There is only one supreme leader, as we call him here in the West. I'm not sure exactly what the Iranian choice of words is preferred to refer to him as, but there's one guy who basically makes the decisions. There's all these other underling clerics who are of lesser significance and influence who say shit all the time. Like there's extremist facts, like Lindsey Graham talking about how we should nuke Moscow, or how we should nuke Iran, or, you just pick a day of the week and go on Lindsey Graham's Twitter account and you'll know what I'm talking about. The extremists within any given society don't represent the voices of the overwhelming majority or the political class. So the fact that there is this fake website, I think this was a Mossad operation, because of course they're trying to triangulate the Iranians and the Americans. The fact that Pezeshkian is still referring to Israel as if they're not like a proxy, as if them and the United States aren't one and the same thing, is just stupid to me. I mean, are they just doing the thing where Russia is pretending to talk to the puppet? Triumph, the insult comic dog, how people get mad at the puppet and they direct their anger at the puppet? Like, is there something psychological, and they forget that the puppet is actually like being puppeteered. Now, in Russia's case, I think they do it because they understand how the game is played. And maybe Iran is trying to emulate that to a certain extent, but they all talk about how it's America, right, who is the one who is like empowering the Israelis to do what they're doing. Without that, Israel wouldn't exist, not in the way it is currently, not, empowered with the state-of-the-art technology that they have and the most advanced weapon systems that America has to offer. So the fact that they're talking to the puppet in the form of Israel, some people will say the tail's wagging the dog, they're one and the same thing. Okay, it's another state, essentially. And it's all part of the same empire. But the fact that they're having this, they're dignifying this talk of, oh, well, the Americans need to rein in Israel. as if they're not one and the same thing. It's like the Americans, you need to, Ukraine needs to come to the negotiating table. No, Putin has always stated, with the exception of when he's, doing this pantomime theater, engaging in it with the West, he's always understood that it's the United States we have to negotiate with. There's no point in negotiating with Ukraine because they're not the ones calling the shots. It's NATO. Anyways, they're crowdfunding a bounty on Trump's head. It's probably just an account set up by Western intelligence in order to try to, make it look as though there's attempts to actually assassinate the president. Now, that said, Donald Trump did try to kill the entire Iranian leadership. Let's face it. I mean, he did with Soleimani, and of course he's going to pass the buck on to Netanyahu, but he basically condoned it and supported it and defended it and used the best military assets to defend Israel's reign throughout the region. So, effectively, that makes you, complicit, to say the least. So I'm not saying it would be justified at all, but I'm just saying that if you're the Iranians, I mean, it should be expected that they would try to do the same thing with us. And again, I don't want that to happen. I want to make that abundantly clear because, I think if that actually happened, things would get way worse, way quicker. We would see nukes. If Trump got taken out, we would see nukes immediately. There would be, without hesitation, boom, nuclear bomb, regime change. And maybe that's the threat, sword of Damocles hanging over his head that we don't know about. People are going to make all kinds of apologies for Trump. To your own peril, and you'll be fooled again and again and again until you realize that these people are cut from a different cloth than little old you and me. Okay, they don't care about you personally. I mean, there might be some sort of, patriotic sentiment where they feel, they look at the flag and they feel, but at the end of the day, there's the elites and there's the underclass. And we, if you're in the 99% and below, really, unless you're in the, not even the 1% anymore, unless you're in the 0.001%, you really are in a different, we're in a different realm, a different orbit of things. And they just genuinely don't care if we live or die. And that's going to become more abundantly clear when they start rolling out the robots very soon. They won't need us for anything, okay? Aside to breed in our chromosomes. And I'm sure they'll find a way to, you know, if they even, they'll do bioengineering, and they'll make up for whatever they lose by having us sacks of meat around. As I indicated, Trump is going to arm Ukraine. Big surprise. Ukraine is being attacked with ferocity, claims Trump, so I will send weapons to Kiev. Again, Putin is not a good guy. He's a bad guy. He's killed a lot of people, and I don't think he respects me. I'm not happy with him at all, as he stated. Shipments of U.S. military aid to Ukraine could resume following a series of high-level meetings in Italy and Ukraine this week. Well, they've never really ended. You know, all this talk about, oh, we're ending, it's all for show. It's all for show. As I talked about yesterday, I broke down how the war between Russia and Ukraine is on a whole other level of intensity at this point in time, and nobody is talking about it. And that is the crazy thing. I think I've talked about that inverse relationship with respect to media attention towards hostilities and the intensification of said hostilities, as such that as things get more and more severe, the media ignores it more and more. Ignore it at your own peril. I'm not saying you got to fixate on it. I'm not saying you even need to really truly understand all the nuances of what's going on. Just understand that every single day that goes by, we get ever closer to nuclear war. Now, it appears as though it's like Zeno's paradox. We keep getting closer and closer, and it keeps having and having and having, and we never quite get there. Eventually, they're going to run out of options. And if Trump goes all in with Ukraine and its capability to now get this, Ukraine is now building, they claim, even if a tenth of this claim is true, they're now claiming they're building 200,000 drones a month. 200,000 drones a month. People who think and who have been saying that Russia has this in the bag and Ukraine is on the brink of collapse, I'm going to try not to make any accusations, because there's always those people who are always, time and time again, it always seems like it doesn't matter how long Ukraine hangs in there, they continue to believe that their defeat is right around the corner. Any day now, they're going to be completely destroyed, right? That's what we hear time and time again. But it never happens. And by the time it is actually going to happen, NATO is going to step in, and then it's going to be a war with Russia and NATO. They were saying 2026, 2027 before, but that could be accelerated. You got the Netherlands, who's going to be sending their F-35s to police the Polish-Ukraine corridor. NATO is getting closer every single day, okay? Poland is moving military equipment towards the border with Kaliningrad. All right, you have Germany getting ready to put their big 5,000 troop tripwire into the Baltic states, which is supposed to be fully deployed within 2 years. Even if there's a handful of troops there and this shit starts to go sideways, because now Germany is going to be getting their nuclear-tipped Tomahawk missiles in 2026 that are going to be kind of bundled into this, or integrated into this Golden Dome nonsense. Well, yeah, keep on prepping, that's all I'll say. In a Friday call, Trump said he had ordered a review of Pentagon stockpiles after last month's strikes on Iran had frozen deliveries. He assured Zelensky that the U.S. would send as much aid as it could spare. They're just going to use the Europeans as an intermediary. They're going to do lend-lease with Ukraine. That's the whole scam, is that Ukraine is going to start buying the weapons with money promised from these potential future rare earth mineral deals that are likely never going to materialize for many, many generations. And if they do, it probably will either be in a nuclear wasteland or it will be the Russians who are signing those checks. Yep. EU sanctions. The EU is preparing to introduce tough sanctions against Russia in the next 3 years. Ooh. I'm sure Vladimir Putin is shaking in his boots. But this proposed deal to impose 500% tariffs on any country who's buying Russian oil, that's fairly significant. That could force China to make a move, to really try to militarily establish themselves. They're trying to be very, very quiet at this point in time. But eventually, something is going to be expected of them. They're going to have to take a stance. And I think the West right now is testing the waters. All that said, you better keep on prepping, my friends, because one of these days, the worst case scenario is going to unfold. The preppers only need to be right once. Just once.